You don't give a fuck whether you land or not, just let him go. Don't worry about it, you're gonna be a shitty fight, but you gotta let punches go.
Last round.
You can't wait until they get, if you miss it, bang, go right back. And don't take 30 seconds to explode another punch.
Alexander, I'm the best ever. There's never been anybody like me. I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey, there's no one like me. I'm from Nairport, there's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable.
Look at that combination. And the turn.
I kept telling you he had no punch, he couldn't hit, he's swinging like a sissy, he's missing, let me see your bumps. I hadn't started dancing yet. A tremendous motivational first round, and Hearns gets hurt. Hearns got stunned. Hackle was stunned early in the round. Great first round. Incredible. Perhaps one of the best in middleweight history.
That black guy, he hits hard.
Fire!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Hands of Fire Boxing Talk. I'm your host, George Dampier, reporter and writer with RealCombatMedia.com, and today is, let's go with the date, be super formal about it. It is June 23rd, 2016, Thursday, approximately 11:15 p.m. East Coast, USA Standard Time. And, we got a big fight weekend coming up. It's been kind of dead lately. Last week there was the PBC fight headlined by Fonfara and Joe Smith Jr., where a huge upset took place in the first round over Fonfara, who is supposed to be the favorite, obviously. Is supposed to be being lined up for a rematch with Adonis Stevenson, and it doesn't look like that's going to be happening anytime soon. Joe Smith ended him in the first round. Really impressive knockout. It started out with really actually Joe Smith being on the back foot. Fonfara caught him, and it looked like he had him hurt a little bit, so Smith covered up, and just as he said, I guess later on in the post-conference or the post-fight interview, he said that he was just waiting for an opening, and that's exactly what he did. He found a right to land right over in the middle of in between Fonfara's punches and decked him. Fonfara got up and clearly still on shaky legs, and Joe Smith Jr. finished him and is now. Now his fate is definitely into his hands. I can say that he's probably no longer a full-time construction worker. Let's just say that. So but that was just about it as far as any real decent fights. I mean, of course there was a undercard too, but I wasn't really impressed with anything as far as worth noting. On this podcast, and time is precious because this is only about 30 minutes, and with today what we got going on, Canelo Golovkin, Povetkin's promoter, and of course all the fights that we have coming up this weekend. So let's jump into it. Of course, you guys know the main breaking headline news yesterday was the verbal agreement between Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin to a verbal agreement to fight September 2017, unfortunately. This was reported by LA Times' Lance Pugmire, who said the match will be at 160 pounds, and it's for that reason, for the long wait, is because of the wait. Dan Raphael had a close source that said that out of Canelo's camp, saying that Canelo wanted to, Canelo wanted to fight, or at least have a fight or two to acclimate to the weight. Well, just as we pretty much were thinking was going to come up next anyway, right? I mean, if he was, many people thought he was going to be vacating anyway, but if But definitely what people were expecting, though, instead of the Khan fight, was a David Lemieux or Curtis Stevens. And ironically enough, they both fought on the same night, on the undercard of Canelo's fight. So, it's... let's finish going on, and then we'll talk about it. Alvarez obviously is now still seeking a opponent for September 17th of this year, and it was reported, and it seemed like it was just just rumors, but it turned out it was totally legit. Alvarez's manager confirmed that Pacquiao is no longer in the running as far as their next fight, which was they were seriously contemplating fighting Manny Pacquiao. And if you've seen pictures lately of Canelo Alvarez, who's pretty much been in hiatus since his vacating of the belt, and as he should, he is small, man. Like I mean, with fighters that that are out of when they're not active, not training or anything, just blowing up. But this guy looks sick. I mean, he looks like he's at about 147 pounds. And it's really just, it's just leaving a continuous bad taste in your mouth, because this is, well, first of all, let's just go back to the verbal agreement between the two. I actually kind of just laughed at the fact that this was even a headline to begin with, because here we're making this is supposed to be a big point of just the fact that they reached a verbal agreement, not a contractual agreement. Nothing was been signed, but we're supposed to go off the word. Now, I could have sworn we were supposed to be going off the word almost about a year ago. It seemed about since November. Then we have Oscar De La Hoya's word that the winner of Cotto Canelo is going to fight the winner of Lemieux Golovkin, which I believe around at that time Golovkin had already won. So I mean, that was supposed to be taking place. And at that point in time when Oscar had talked about this fight, it was around the time where he was trying to shit on PBC and Al Heyman for not making the big fights happen, and making fun of the fact that, they like their little marinating process to lead up big fights. And I kind of was in agreement with him on that. But at least to Al Heyman's credit, he has more of a pattern for his fighters, where it's more of a, it's a build-up fight for one, and then a big fight the next one. It's hardly ever do you see, well, besides Deontay Wilder, do you see some, like the PBC fighters fight, 3 low-class fighters in a row. He usually at least at most will do 2, and then get a pretty decent or step-up fight at that point. Here, De La Hoya really just made a fool out of himself for about a complete year, and he's just, told people that, this is definitely going to happen, the weight isn't a problem, and so this is why when it came to, a purse split of 90-10 was just basically pricing yourself out, and the weight being an issue when everybody knew that Canelo goes in the ring about 175 pounds. All of this was just bullshit just to not have the fight. And so this really just solidified that, 1, he wasn't ready. 2, you're hurting the credibility of Canelo with this. So now he has to, and what makes this worse is the fact that it really was confirmed that they were looking at Pacquiao as their next fight. Because again, part of the credibility issue with Canelo Alvarez is the fact that and this is my stance on with Canelo. He's probably a really good fighter, I won't know because he won't fight anyone his size. So he looks super impressive against really smaller guys, and that's pretty much what he's been doing for about the past 2 or 3 years now, is beating up smaller guys, going in, outweighing them, and all of a sudden this perception of this monstrous power that Canelo has kind of just runs this folklore for him now. And it's just not the case. He's just being a heavier guy. And now you're going to you were really trying to go in there with Manny Pacquiao? That's bullshit. And in a way, I kind of hope that fight did happen, just in case, just so Pacquiao could pull out his performance against Margarito and just bust him up. Even though he probably won't knock him out, just bust him up the whole fight. Just to make even for the little guys. Because it's terrible. Oscar is going to ruin this kid's career. And you know what? Let's just say that this possibly is supposed to be, or at least agreed upon. Not just verbal, if it's actually like, hey, look, you're contractually obligated to make this happen. Let's say that is the case. Now, this fight is pretty much now swinging in the I don't know what type of metaphorical word I'm trying to look for here, but it's basically swinging in the balance for these pretty much interim fights up to that point. So if any of these guys lose, look how much money just got lost because you wanted to, again, marinate. This fucking word, marinate. I can't stand this shit. This is why UFC is kicking our ass when it comes to viewership. Because fans actually like to gloat and go, and hype up this promoter talk. Like there's an interest for us in not having a fight happen. Now, part of, this also kind of ties to the fights that are coming up this weekend, but Golovkin is at least having some serious talks, at least for his next opponent, and it looks like he probably will be looking for a fight maybe around August or September. Talks about a Chris Eubank Jr., who is a pretty decent fighter. I've seen him. This first fight I've seen of him was his loss against. I almost said Bernie Sanders. Jesus Christ, Billy Joe Saunders. Yeah, I don't think Bernie Sanders will stand a chance. But yeah, and it seems like Chris Eubank is. Well, let me stop. I'll just stop it at that. I'll go into it later. But yes, supposedly he's supposed to be getting lined up with Chris Eubank Jr., who also has a fight this weekend. And like I said, we'll talk about that later. Another headline for this news that broke today is that Povetkin manager Andrei Rybinski has filed a lawsuit against Wilder for $34.5 million, seeking damages for defamation and breach of contract. There was, of course, you guys know that this was supposed to be a fight between Povetkin and Wilder back on May 21st. The fight did not happen because of Wilder pulled out when it was confirmed that Povetkin had tested positive for donium. Sorry. A little dyslexic there. When I first started talking about this stuff with you guys, I was kind of, it's kind of black and white. It's like, hey, look, you failed. Look, that fight's, I don't know if it's fight needs to be necessarily off, but at least put back somewhat. It obviously can't happen then and there. But the more I read and the more I looked into it, I kind of have more of a firmer stance on this. Reading into this article, this was actually published on BoxingScene.com. It was reported that there was 0.07 micrograms of meldonium found in the fourth of 6 samples. Now, I don't know what micrograms actually measure out to, and I don't know what it looks like, but my perception of a microgram is probably about the smallest measurement you could probably think of, right? But let's keep going. At least on the side of, Povetkin's team, they believe that, such a small amount could not have been due to doping, because even if the minimum dose had been taken, the level would have been the level would have been a dozen times higher. And when you think about how small the trace actually was, and well, let me just keep going so we can actually have a full context of everything. Rubinski feels that Wilder had made hay out of it, made too much out of the situation, and by going to the press and calling Povetkin a cheater and all this, and so henceforth the lawsuit. Now, things didn't really get clarified for me about this whole situation until I read this, which is based on WADA protocol here, is that levels less than 1 microgram do not require an athlete to stop participating in competitions. And that's well within what Povetkin had tested for. See, when it just comes up that someone tested positive of something, it's easy to think that, oh man, what a dirtbag. But now that I read this and I'm seeing everything from, including WADA, is what really was solidified it for me. This didn't need to be canceled, and like it was mentioned here, if you were to take the smallest dosage you could of meldonium, you would have tested higher than the amount that he got. And again, he did pass the first 3 tests. And, from guys that I know that are, deep into the science of, performance enhancers, meldonium really isn't one you go to for an advantage. So, and of course, obviously Povetkin's team saw this. This is why, the main reason why they're making this lawsuit is the fact that, the fight could still go through. It didn't need to be canceled. And now, obviously, the WBC is still investigating the matter, which is, I don't know what the hell they could be thinking. If they haven't come to some type of solution by now, it's not looking too good when it's taking this long. I mean, you got the facts there in front of you. You got WADA right there. What else do you need? It's I just think that Wilder probably should have just went through with this. It doesn't seem to be as bad as, the way it was portrayed at first. And I'm kind of starting to see why a lot of guys were, pissed off with Wilder. At first, I didn't get it. I mean, like, what the hell are you mad at Wilder for Povetkin testing positive for? But, now that I'm looking at it, and especially for how long it took for this fight to even happen, dude, this should have just happened. And now, obviously, like we mentioned last week, Wilder is going to be facing Chris Arreola, who, say what you want, could still possibly give Wilder a good fight, despite being completely undeserved of this, the situation that he's in. So, good luck with that, and let's just see what Povetkin really does from here. Because if Wilder's going to take the fight and it's still postponed, well, obviously it's postponed to some extent, obviously, because it's not happening when it was supposed to. But let's see what Povetkin does, and if this lawsuit really holds any weight, because Wilder's promoters were trying to seek the same thing. So I don't know. I'm really intrigued to see how this really ends up working out. Well, speaking of heavyweights, notable fights for the weekend, man. I'm really excited because, for those of you guys who don't know, I haven't been, excited about the heavyweight division since, let's say, back with, I just posted a video about him, Samuel Peters. I haven't been excited about the heavyweight division since him. And Anthony Joshua, who is, I've told you guys, I really am a big fan of this guy. I like him. He's a humble dude. I mean, he looks the part. And, he says all the right stuff. He carries himself the right way. Definitely someone that, he's already someone to look out for now. Let's just wait till he starts getting in there with, other champions. But until then, he is fighting Dominic Breazeale this weekend. And since he signed a Showtime contract earlier this year, I believe this will be aired on Showtime as well. It should be, because also there's Thurman Porter. Also another fight that took forever to happen is now taking place. But let me talk about Joshua and Dominic Breazeale. Obviously, that should probably be it's going to be the main event for the England card. The fights the undercard fights for that fight are George Groves versus Martin Murray, which is pretty much it pretty makes out for a good scrap, because both these guys are kind of at a crossroads. And Chris Eubank Jr., like I mentioned earlier, will be facing Tom Doran. I don't know if that's the way it's pronounced, but I'm not going to give him the satisfaction of pronouncing it by Duran. He doesn't even need to. I seen a face-off picture between those two, and it looked like a fan meeting a boxer. And Duran just was not the boxer in the picture, let's just say that. Okay, now, Anthony Joshua. The guy is a training machine. If you guys ever seen his videos, the guy puts in work into the gym. Faces Dominic Breazeale, who, for me, he got himself into this position. His last fight was a TKO over Amir Mansour. Good, I want to say good friend, because he probably doesn't even know my name, but he's definitely a Jersey native. I met with him, took pictures with him and stuff. Friends with my dad, and it was just unfortunate to see that happening, because if you guys watched the actual fight, Mansour had that fight and had Breazeale ready to go. And if it wasn't for, him injuring his jaw, it definitely would have gone the other way. So Dominic ends up tripping and stumbling his way into this position and gets a crack at the IBF championship of Anthony Joshua. So both these guys, they seem, pretty solid, clean-cut guys. Face-off is kind of interesting. I actually, just before I started recording this, I saw a really interesting face-off. I guess their final press conference video of, them facing off, and the media just completely surrounded them with a bunch of cameras and all that. But something different about this one is that, they were mic'd up. So you heard, like, the little back and forth, the little murmurs back and forth to each other. It is kind of strange, and it was pretty lengthy. That was kind of odd. All right, so let's just go into it because I'm kind of running short on time. I think Anthony Joshua should probably, he's definitely going to win this fight. It's just a matter of when. Dominic Breazeale carries a lot of size with him. But other than that, doesn't really offer much. So I think Anthony Joshua will take maybe 1 or 2 rounds to get used to the feel of fighting a bigger guy, and then once he, gets comfortable, it's really just a matter of time. So I say around the 3rd or 4th round is when some clean punches, some real hard clean punches start to land for him, and just a matter of time for Breazeale to go down. So, Anthony Joshua, I say in the 4th. And I think, actually, Anthony Joshua predicted the 4th himself. Thurman Porter. Let me just hurry up and get into it because this should have been done with back in November, right? Isn't this when this was first announced? Or at least first supposed to take place? Thurman had recently released a video of, a sparring video between him and Sean Porter, where Thurman really did a bang-up job against Porter. Obviously, it's sparring. You don't protect yourself the same way, and, you're a little bit more lenient with your mistakes. But, at least there you got a good barometer to see on how Thurman would move around in that fight. And it's really evident just there in that video that, if he's going to be able to keep up with his movement, circle Porter, and still land hard shots in between to obviously have something to back up Porter, if he can bring that one time back into Thurman, he's going to hurt Porter. And he'll obviously have something, or have Porter something to think about every time he's trying to move in. Now, if Porter can find a way to slip, make a lot of good head movements to work his way in, and eventually bang up to the body, which everyone kind of sees as Thurman's Achilles heel since that Luis Collazo fight. If he can get inside and really start to work, and make the most of it, it could really be a good fight. So, and that's what makes this such an intriguing fight is, for guys to win, they have to be very, very disciplined in their game plan. So, with that said, though, I think, this is like the first time I'm putting myself on the spot to actually come up with a winner here. Going off with what I saw, I'm gonna have to say, and I like Porter too. This is a bad thing. I like Porter and his dad and all that, but I think Thurman pulls this off. I don't know if it's going to be a knockout, but I think he'll win by unanimous decision. All right. Now that the tough fights are out the way, let me just go through these last 2 fights, which are the undercards of the Dominic Breazeale and Anthony Joshua fight. George Groves versus Martin Murray. Super middleweight fight. Both these guys are, like I mentioned, are at a crossroads. George Groves, had his one bounce back fight from his loss of Badu Jack last year. Did what he was supposed to do. Martin Murray, another solid fighter, of course, more notably for his loss against Gennady Golovkin, I'm going to have to say that Martin Murray looks like the more complete fighter. George Groves tends to, I don't know. He seems to stick to the same game plan even when it doesn't work. So I'm going to say Martin Murray. Unanimous decision. Possible late knockout. Alright. Jesus Christ. I don't even think I need to make a prediction for this fight. Chris Eubank Jr. against Tom Doran. No need to even mention a prediction. However, what I will say though is I'm looking for what Chris Eubank picks up as far as what he displays as far as skill in this fight. What I saw with him in his past fights, it seems like he really just gets off on the fact that he's a busy fighter. Like if he can if you allow him to keep busy, is where he'll do his best work. Saunders was able to disrupt him a lot, and he just was never able to get set to do really anything. So I think that with that in mind, I think obviously he's not going to be able to do enough to really beat Gennady Golovkin. I don't even know. I ended up turning this into a prediction for that fight. Anyway, that's about it for me. We gotta wrap it up. Hands of Fire Boxing Talk. Keep your hands up, y'all.